Israel Update with Gadi Tau and Mike Duran. Hello and Chag Sameach. Welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It's been 1 year and 8 days exactly since this war began. It's one day before the eve of Sukkot. It's the 15th of October, 2024. I'm Gadi Taub in Tel Aviv, and Mike Duran is in the Hudson offices in our Washington, D.C. bureau. Hello, Mike.
Bureau,
yeah, that's the Israel Update Bureau of Washington, D.C. You're not aware of that?
This is the headquarters.
It's the headquarters. I'm the bureau. And so now I'm the field office. So Chag Sameach to you, Mike. It's just been Yom Kippur here, and you may remember that last year in Tel Aviv, it was eclipsed by the war, but last year in Tel Aviv, Yom Kippur was a serious crisis because the Kaplan forces, the anti-Bibi, anti-reform, radical secular protesters interfered with a prayer in Yom Kippur in public in the Dizengoff Square. And the official excuse was that some people wanted to pray men and women separately, and this should not be allowed according to the radical secularists in the public sphere. But it later turned out that they are against any prayer in the public sphere, at least many of them. And then there was a whole controversy about the Simchat Torah, which is the end of Sukkot, where you celebrate the end of the reading of the Torah. And this was going to be a major crisis, but the war intervened on that Shabbat morning. This year, the municipality of Tel Aviv decided to ban public prayers entirely from squares, what they call it, intensive urban areas, where that would disturb the public peace. And the people who organized the prayers in previous years, an organization called Rosh Yehudi, a Jewish head who run a synagogue and also run evening classes in their community center, appealed to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court sensibly said that, okay, that prayers, even prayers with separation between women and children and men in a symbolic barriers were, believe it or not, allowed in Tel Aviv. If this was banned, if any municipality anywhere else in the West would have done what the Tel Aviv fanatic Kaplan, anti-reform, anti-Bibi, radical leftist secularist municipality did here, we would have called it out as anti-Semitism. They tried to ban Jewish prayers from the public sphere. This is unimaginable. And so there was a Supreme Court decision. Why am I telling you this whole story, not in the news, but as a personal story to begin our show? Because after the Supreme Court gave that decision, the goody two-shoes that Rosh Yehudi are, they said, okay, we accept the win, we take the win, and we won't stage the public prayers. And many of us were outraged by that. And so a prayer was organized right near the LGBT center in Gan Meir, where the Supreme Court said they should take place. And we expected some kind of disturbance because there are a lot of threats. There's this radical, Twitter activist woman who said, I'll show up with a bikini in Yom Kippur and I will eat falafel in your face and so on. And nothing happened. There was
the point not being the falafel, but the point being eating on Yom Kippur.
Yeah, and probably the bikini, because allegedly this was a gender issue, and everything was peaceful. There was a symbolic barrier, mechitza, separating bamboo, a wooden barrier, and the women who wanted to pray separately prayed beyond the barrier. Women who wanted to pray with their spouses or boyfriends prayed on our side, and the prayer was peaceful. On Yom Kippur and on Yom Kippur Eve, and it ended with the shofar. And after the shofar, everyone sang a tikva. And then I realized it was okay to take your phone out, and so I took a short video of hatikva, which I will show you now. And it was a very uplifting moment. that was an improvisation. I wasn't thinking of showing the video, but now I think it's worth showing. אז אנחנו נראה אותו. So it all ended up peacefully, and a Jewish prayer would be permitted in Tel Aviv.
You know, but you know, this really makes me laugh.
Yeah, it did on the last day.
Do you know
Yeah.
why? Do you know why it makes me laugh?
I do, but please say again.
Yeah, because how many times have you prayed during Yom Kippur in the last 20 years?
None.
so the only way to get you to be a religious Jew is to have the left wing tell you that you can't be. And then you
No.
Oh, no, come on.
No.
It's not a little bit of music.
This was not a laughing matter for me at all. I made a long video explaining why I think people should come. Many secular people come, is because when you feel that your identity is attacked, you come to defend it. And it was a defense of the right of religious people to pray in public. And I thought it was important enough
I understand it's a serious issue. I understand that. I get that. But it's still funny to me that this is what it takes to get you to pray.
Yeah, that's funny from DC. It was
all right. Okay.
It was a serious matter.
All right. I expected to get a laugh out of you on that. Okay. All right. Let's switch to a lighter issue.
The news.
Before we go to the news, I want to show you something. I've been a bit envious of you for a long time because you have a bigger microphone than me. But now look at this. You see that?
I see that. That's a Rode microphone. And let me tell you, I'm gonna change to Shure soon, so you'll have to update. But keep it close to yourself because it tends to be with low gain, and I suspect that I'm going to have to correct the audio after we record. Imagine that. Mike, let's hear what's on the news.
What we have in the news? Okay, all right. What do we have here? So, on Sunday, a drone launched by Hezbollah hit an army base full of soldiers from the Golani Brigade, training for combat near Benyamina, which is just south of Haifa. 4 soldiers were killed, and many dozens, like about 5 dozen, I think, were injured. The attack highlighted a severe failure of the air defense system to detect incoming attacks. The U.S. is delivering today, that's Tuesday, a thermal high-altitude area defense system to Israel. This is the THAAD system. This is a highly advanced missile defense system, the most advanced one the United States has, and it intercepts ballistic missiles exo-atmospherically. Of course, this is as part of the preparations for Israel's retaliation against Iran. Israel Hayom reports about a security consultation that the prime minister had last night in the Kiryat, that's the Pentagon of Israel, to discuss the possible retaliation in Lebanon for the drone attack, as well as the retaliation against Iran. The delivery of the THAAD system, by the way, Gadi, led to reports which I believe are accurate, that the United States has asked Israel to pause its attacks in Beirut. And if you've noticed, there have been much fewer in the last few days. At the same time, the ground maneuver in Lebanon has continued. The IDF Northern Command estimates that some 800 Hezbollah fighters have been killed, including 80 in the last 24 hours. IDF troops found a command base with a fully equipped kitchen alongside anti-helicopter missiles, shells, and motorcycles. An entire underground complex was built at the heart of a residential neighborhood and was designed to serve the Radwan forces in their planned offensive against the Galilee. Prime Minister Netanyahu issued a video statement on Sunday calling for all UNIFIL forces to evacuate the combat areas in southern Lebanon. UNIFIL is, of course, the UN peacekeeping force in Lebanon. The chief of the force, General Lockhart, responded that the decision was made that UNIFIL will currently stay in all of its positions. A statement issued by the Security Council this morning tacitly rejected Israeli calls for evacuation of the peacekeepers. The council urged all parties, without naming them, to respect the safety and security of the UNIFIL personnel. Over the weekend, the New York Times reported that they have obtained secret documents that expose, these are from the Israelis, secret documents which the Israelis captured from Hamas, that expose the attempts of Hamas to persuade Hezbollah and Iran to join the October 7th attack. The article states that Hamas had originally planned on attacking Israel in the fall of 2022, but delayed their operation by a year in an effort to incorporate Hezbollah and Iran into this multi-pronged assault. The Washington Post reported on Monday that Prime Minister Netanyahu has informed the Biden administration that Israel will not attack oil refineries and nuclear facilities in Iran as part of its response to the Iranian missile attack. Back over to you, Gadi.
So let's start with UNIFIL. This is outrageous, isn't it? Because UNIFIL were there supposedly to keep the peace. Supposedly the UN had to help in implementing Security Council Resolution 1701, which should have kept southern Lebanon secure. Instead, they became the human shields for Hezbollah to arm themselves and to entrench themselves in what we know now was a whole web of offensive tunnels, missiles, and other equipment.
No, it's remarkable, actually. I'm surprised that the UNIFIL is refusing. Well, I'm not totally surprised, but I am surprised that they are refusing to get out of harm's way. The Israelis embarrassed them yesterday by showing that a Hamas tunnel was 100 yards from a UNIFIL position. Clearly, if you followed this over the years, as I have, Hezbollah periodically intimidates UNIFIL. A few years ago, some UNIFIL soldiers went down the wrong road, a road that they were prohibited to go down by Hezbollah, and Hezbollah attacked them, actually. You never hear any criticism of Hezbollah from the UN, from the Security Council, from the forces themselves. The resentment is toward Israel. The 1701 calls for there to be no Hezbollah forces south of the Litani, but this is, like you say, the UNIFIL is actually serving as a kind of shield for Hezbollah, rather than preventing Hezbollah from setting up facilities and positions from which to attack Israel. And we can see now from the tunnels and complexes that Israel is discovering that the Hezbollah was very much planning an October 7th style attack. It was the plans were quite advanced, and it would have been much worse than anything we saw from Hamas.
This is doubly outrageous because now we also know that the IDF chiefs, and including Minister of Security Yoav Gallant, were advocating some sort of agreement to end hostilities in the north just a few weeks back, after they knew the full extent of the Hezbollah infrastructure ready to strike at Israel. They were going to call for the return of people to villages and towns in the north in the range of Hezbollah without taking out the clear danger that that Hezbollah poses to us in the north if it's equipped the way we discovered that it is. And secondly, what we see is, Mike, and you've been saying, and you and I have been saying, and it's very hard to get across, Hezbollah is protected by the United States in a protective umbrella, and by the United Nations, and by France. This is how they imposed a maritime border agreement between Lebanon and Israel. They imposed an agreement in which Israel had to cede territory in return for nothing at all. It's part of the Biden administration's attempt to find some kind of new balance or realignment, as you call it, with Iran. In other words, to appease Iran. And when you say that to people, they say, "Oh no, that can't be." But the fact is, look at what they're doing. Look at what Amos Hochstein was doing there. Look at what UNIFIL is doing there. Look at what Macron did there, who threatened a weapons embargo on Israel if it proceeds in the north.
I've got a little bit of good news on that front. I agree with everything you said, of course, but the American policy in Lebanon shifted a bit in the last couple of weeks, and it is now no longer, the United States is no longer marching in lockstep with France. Just a few weeks ago, France and the United States had a joint plan for a ceasefire in Lebanon. France is still calling for a ceasefire. The United States is not. If you look at the U.S. statements, they're calling for a diplomatic solution, but they're not calling for an immediate ceasefire. So they have opened up a little bit of space for the Israelis. The agreement between the Israelis and the Americans is that Israel can go in some 5 kilometers all along the border and root out all of these tunnel complexes and everything. This is happening with the support of the United States. And the guy, I'm reliably informed, the guy who pushed the hardest for this was Amos Hochstein. He went to Biden. He was a staffer for Biden on the Hill. He has a long time personal relationship with him, and he's the one who sold this idea to the president. I don't think everyone in the administration was thrilled about it. I think the
so
overall,
Hochstein is now the hawk in that team, a relative hawk.
Relatively speaking, with regard to Lebanon, and that Lebanon is his file more than anyone else's in the administration, and he opened up this space for the Israelis to move in along the border. Now, we don't want to go too far with this because all the stuff that you just said about the Americans seeking a diplomatic solution, which is going to keep Hezbollah intact, or not intact, but keep, which is going to, the United States is not in favor of the defeat of Hezbollah. They're not supporting Israel, say, going all the way up to the Litani and rooting Hezbollah out of every inch of South Lebanon. They want Israel to secure the border. This has always been the Hochstein plan. The Hochstein plan was always to find a diplomatic solution that would move the Radwan forces some 5 or 10 kilometers from the border in return for an agreement that would bring lots of development to South Lebanon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Hochstein is still operating 100% within that mindset, which I think is a defective mindset. But within that context, he said, okay, let's just have Israel move Hezbollah the 5 or 10 kilometers. And so then they'll create a new reality on the ground along the border, which will give Israel security. And then we can get to the business of cutting the deal with Hezbollah and Iran. So they haven't switched their paradigm entirely, but they have opened up a space for Israeli military action within that paradigm.
That's amazing, because I think that if we look back and let's remind ourselves that not too long ago, we were faced with a new bright red line by the Biden administration. Do not cross into Lebanon under any circumstances, or there will be a complete weapons embargo. And what did Israel do? It inched across the American red line. And I think, Mike, we can look in retrospect and see, and there's a pattern here. And this is what Netanyahu is doing. He doesn't smash through the red lines. And this began with, you remember the first ground incursion, we were told that's not an operation, that's just a small incursion. And what Netanyahu is doing, and I think what he wants to do, obviously, his greater goal. He would have liked the United States to have shifted to supporting a war against Iran, or an Israeli campaign that would take out the Iranian, at least the Iranian nuclear program. But what he is doing to achieve that is always stepping just across the line and embarrassing the United States in such a way that they're uncomfortable clamping down on him for doing just this little thing. And of course there are also little devices like attacking or like targeting a person who is wanted by the United States. But what he's doing is not defying the United States in a flagrant way. On occasions, he does make a clear statement, like the entering into Rafah. But that too we're not entering the center of Rafah, just the margins of Rafah, and the war. And if we look at it, Mike, this is a swing motion towards Tehran, right? Because it began. It's a war in Gaza, and it was clearly Netanyahu's interest to make this into a war with Hezbollah, an excuse to take out Hezbollah, and enough of a campaign against Hezbollah to get Iran involved, and then possibly we don't know. We're expecting. Our last episode was called War with Iran, and that didn't materialize. But
it's coming.
But this is. I think the swing motion is now clear and where it's headed.
Yeah. I of course agree. Again, I agree with everything you said, but I would make a couple of little points of nuance here. The big point at which Hochstein went to Biden and said, "Sir, we have to shift our policy and let the Israelis enter Lebanon and agree to Israeli entry into Lebanon," was the killing of Nasrallah. So. This wasn't an inching. This actually was a big thing that the Israelis did to defy the Americans. The Americans were very unhappy. We now had in the Wall Street Journal last week. They quoted an account of Secretary of Defense Austin talking to Yoav Gallant. And Yoav Gallant said, "Oh, by the way, we've just killed Nasrallah," and Austin said, "I beg your pardon."
Say what?
What did you just do? And then he called him back later. Austin called Gallant back later and said, "Listen, if you tell me, do you want to fight this war entirely on your own? Because if you're not going to consult with us." If you're not going to consult with us about these major steps, then that's what's going to end up happening. Which is, we'll come back to this in a bit when we talk about Iran and Lebanon, Iran in Lebanon. But for the moment, let me just say that Hochstein's response to all that, you can imagine how unhappy everybody was. They were all complaining about Netanyahu. They were not there was no rejoicing in the upper ranks of the Biden administration. And I'm not just saying this as conjecture. I have done a little bit of snooping to find out about this. There was no rejoicing about the killing of Nasrallah. It was seen as a terrible, scary, horrible thing by that very bad man, Benjamin Netanyahu. So,
isn't that amazing of how what their whole worldview is when you kill an arch terrorist and they're not happy. It's like,
no, not happy at all. Very bad.
It's like we would have shed a tear after the killing of bin Laden. It's like, where is your head? This administration, and it seems like they've got carried away on their own progressive woke version of their Iran policy, that they no longer can tell good from bad. And clearly, ask them what would they have liked better? Would they have liked better than Nasrallah kill Netanyahu? I mean, just targeted killing, only Netanyahu. Yoav Gallant would have remained. Would they be as sad?
I doubt it. They would see an opportunity. Yeah, but anyway, let's talk a little bit about this. Let's talk a little bit about this attack on the Golani Brigade by Benyamina, because it's a big deal, actually. So if you think about what I just said, that I think you and I got a little carried away last week, or was it the week before, in feeling like Israel was powerful and reshaping the whole map. If you think about what I just said, Hezbollah is thinking they're planning their military moves, Hezbollah and Iran, while thinking about the diplomacy. They're in a political military conflict. And they understand the negotiation all along has been, the demand all along from the Americans has been, Israel will leave certain points along the border, will withdraw from certain points along the border, and in return, Hezbollah will move 5 or 10 kilometers north. So now what's happening is the Americans are allowing the Israelis to force Hezbollah to the north. But as I say, they haven't given up that whole framework. So the question is the withdrawal of Hezbollah forces from the border, is that a retreat in disarray, or is it a strategy?
Reorganization.
A reorganization. Is it an orderly retreat or a collapse? And I think what we're seeing is that it is more of an orderly retreat than we might have thought. That attack, the attack on Benyamina, or on the base next to Benyamina, was a sophisticated attack. It started out with rockets, and then the drones were launched under the cover of the rockets in order to confuse the sensors and interceptors. And it also was based on very good intelligence from the Iranians, presumably. And I say from the Iranians because what's happening is Israel decapitated Hezbollah, and the organization is still reeling from it, and Iran is still reeling from it. But what's happening is the Iranians are sending Quds Force officers to Lebanon to fill in the gap left by the killed commanders. And
so these are. Let me just point out that the Quds Force are Farsi ethnics and not Arabs, and
yes.
so it's not the same ethnic composition.
No, it's not.
Direct Iranian command.
Direct Iranian command or advisors are coming in to try to try to make up for the lost command level that the Israelis destroyed. You need that command level in order to do complex operations like have rockets and drones together and so on. Now, Hezbollah is distinguished from just about every other Arab military in that the officers at the field level are encouraged to take initiative and not to call back to headquarters for orders. So they have more initiative. It's one of the things that makes Hezbollah more dangerous to Israel than any of its other enemies. And, in a lot of other Arab armies, if you took out the command structure like Israel had done to Hezbollah, that would be the collapse of the military. But you don't have that here. So you have these field units that still have a significant amount of their weaponry, and their forces are still intact, but they're kind of headless because of the decapitation. So to make up for that, the Iranians are sending these Quds Force guys, and that's why you've had these attacks presumably by Israel, attributed to Israel, in Damascus, in the Iranian neighborhood in Damascus, and you've also had the Israelis trying to close the border crossings into Lebanon. I think the main issue here is not weaponry, but there's lots of weapons in Lebanon, but personnel they're going after. So what my point here is, Iran is not giving up, Gadi, not at all. They understand what's at stake here, and they are trying to recoup. And unfortunately, American policy is creating a space for them to recoup.
Yeah, so one more optimistic take on the same facts can be if we were to assume that Israel should avoid any attempt to end this conflict with any agreement that leaves חיזבאללה on its feet, then in the framework of that plan, it is better that Iran would dig in than that it would offer a white flag and retreat and would be able, under a new, say, 1701 style Security Council resolution, to create the umbrella that the international community seems anxious to offer חיזבאללה, again, under which Iran would be able to resupply it. But we'll have to see, because if I'm right, and this is a slow swing movement, I thought it would take a decade, and it's moving much faster than I imagined, because if you remember from the very beginning, you've been saying, many people have been saying that this is Act 1 in a probably series of wars that we will have to fight in order to break the Iranian noose. And the reason for optimism, and I think we may have been a little carried away on the mood of good news, but we were not essentially wrong on the analysis, because what we see is, if we look back and just peel off all the rhetoric, what Israel has been doing is a slow march towards an attack on Tehran, which it is unclear if we are able to carry out, and we have to remind ourselves and our viewers and listeners that we do not have all the facts. We do not know what the capabilities fully are, what other tricks Israel can pull out of its sleeves, and what the Iranians can pull out of their sleeves. And so the whole discussion in the media has to remain like one step removed from confidence, even in our analysis, which is, Mike, as you know, cutting edge and beyond anything else you can see on the media.
One thing we do know, however, is that the Israelis are dependent on the United States for ammunition and resupply. So I don't, and you see this with the THAAD system coming in. Israel really badly needs the THAAD system. The Financial Times is reporting today that Israel has a shortage of Iron Dome interceptors. And this puts them in a very difficult position. They don't have, if they were to make the decision to take over all of southern Lebanon up to the Litani, they would probably within 3 or 4 weeks be out of ammunition. I'm making this up. I don't know that but they would. Israel doesn't have, just as a matter of course, the war has been going on for a year. It's been Israel was not prepared. We all know this, for a large ground war with a lot of armor, and its ammunition stocks are not at the highest. And a war in southern Lebanon, a ground war in southern Lebanon, is going to be very ammunition intensive, and the Americans know this. This is the great leverage they have over it. It's why they're carrying out this Italian strike against the Israelis, because they want to. Using the bureaucratic excuses to resupply the Israelis at a very low rate, because they want to keep a grip on the Israelis so that they can force them. You know, when they're as we see, if the press is to be believed, we'll find out in a couple of days. But if the press is to be believed, then the Americans have successfully convinced the Israelis to hit only military targets in Iran. I expect that that's probably true.
So we'll have to wait and see. Before we move on, let me go back to Unifield and just tie this into something that's happening in Israel, in which we have been following, and which I've been covering for JNS and on social media, is the way our jurists are getting in the way of Israel's ability to defend itself. So there was a minor drama in the Security and Foreign Affairs Committee of the Knesset, where they were preparing a piece of legislation to make UNRWA, the UN agency for works and relief for the Palestinians, relief and work agency of the UN for the Palestinians, which became an arm of Hezbollah and of Hamas. Sorry. And this is where the schools in which they educate you from kindergarten to murder and rape Jews, and these are the schools under which they hide weapons, and all the personnel of UNRWA, or either the person or their spouse, is officially working for Hamas in some sort of capacity, and some participated in the October 7 massacre. So we keep treating this agency as if this is a human rights organization, but this is an arm of Hezbollah, by the way, through which a lot of money is funneled. We always talk about the Qatari money. The Qatari money is about 4% of the foreign aid that's coming into Gaza. A larger chunk is the international budget of UNRWA, which was temporarily suspended by President Donald Trump and then resumed by President Biden. So there was a piece of legislation outlawing UNRWA outright, and that means cutting it from all its various tentacles, from garbage clearance in East Jerusalem contracts to sewage contracts with the Jerusalem municipality, to waivers of customs duties. Everything that the state does, any business with UNRWA, would have been cut off, and especially the relations of the army, through which the relation between UNRWA and the army. There's a liaison there, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. So there was a piece of legislation intended to cut all that off. And then the advisor from the Ministry of Justice said that all this is well and good so long as it is subject to international covenants that Israel had signed. And of course, the covenants that Israel had signed have legitimized...
Totally nullifies the whole legislation.
Completely. And of course, there are judicial arguments for it, saying, well, we have international obligations according to international law. And this is when I go back to our friend John Fonte, who showed how there is how the anti-Western, anti-national, transnational progressivism is expanding through formal legislative arguments. And this is exactly like UNIFIL, Mike, isn't it? UNIFIL is supposedly protecting the peace. It's actually shielding Hezbollah. Right. UNRWA is supposedly for works and relief of Palestinian refugees. Never mind that they're not refugees anymore. But under this guise, terror is operating. And when they can operate, it gives solace to terror. But when Israel is trying to defend itself, suddenly the sacred international agreements and international law kicks in to tie our hands. And Amit Halevi, the member of Knesset from Likud, who was also a guest on one of our special episodes, if you look back to our earlier episodes, sits on this committee, and he was fighting for saying, look, this is not a judicial question. This is a political question, and Israel is a sovereign state, and it should act unilaterally, regardless of what the learned opinions of jurists are. We can't let this organization shield terrorists. And by the way, we may have to pay a price internationally for that. But Haag will go after us anyway. That too is not really
who will go after you?
What?
Who will go after you?
The Hague, the International Court of Justice at The Hague. We say Haag in Hebrew. Yeah. Why, by the way, why is it always The Hague? There's no The Amsterdam, right?
Yeah, I don't know why that is.
Yeah, that's strange.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a reason, but I don't know it.
not sure it's
yeah. I mean, the
reason.
question.
I think it's
ultimately that this is a beautiful example because that you're giving, because the key question is, are the people sovereign or not? Does sovereignty reside in the Knesset or in some transnational authority somewhere else?
Hence John Fonte's the title of John Fonte's book, Sovereignty or Submission. It's either state sovereignty or we submit to this international milieu who is trying to subordinate states to its undemocratic, unaccountable authority. So that's that, and we'll keep following it. Do we need to say anything more about Iran?
Yeah, I think a couple things. This will not be. I think we've already mentioned it, but let's just discuss it a little bit. The Americans have put restrictions on the Israelis. I expect the Israelis will largely comply. I think the Israelis need to be line steppers. There's an old Dave Chappelle skit that always comes to mind when I think about this, where it wasn't a skit. It was actually a true story from Hollywood. Eddie Murphy's brother, talked about Rick James, the singer, and he described Rick James as a habitual line stepper, because he would always get in your face, and he would punch Charlie Murphy and insult him in public, and so on. And Charlie Murphy said he's a habitual line stepper. Israel has to be a habitual line stepper because it has to show Tehran and Hezbollah that they cannot hide behind the Americans. The Americans will. The Iranian strategy is based on U.S. restricting Israel. And Israel has to be mindful of the American restrictions because it's so dependent on the United States. But on the other hand, it has to show to Iran that it cannot act with impunity just because America is putting restrictions on Israel. So it has to step over the line. So the question is, how is it going to step over the line here? I think it will largely comply. And that's what the THAAD system tells me. It doesn't tell me. It tells me that Biden is putting the bear hug on Israel, not that they're going to war with Israel against Iran. But Israel will still step over the line. I think it'll probably hit undeclared nuclear sites in Iran. The sites that. I mean, this is one way. I mean, the point here is not so much the prediction about undeclared nuclear sites. The prediction is the prediction is that they have to step over the line, but they have to do it in a way that is not too provocative. So, say there's an undeclared nuclear site, the Israelis will hit that. It will send a message to the Iranians, high impact message to the Iranian, but low signature. There will not be a lot of. The Iranians won't be able to admit publicly that the Israelis hit a nuclear site unless they want to say that they had nuclear sites that were secret. So it's that kind of game. That's what will go on, I think, in this attack.
Very, very interesting. Mike, do we have any comments by our viewers and listeners that we want to address? Because our producer, Yaakov Wilner, put some of them on our agenda.
Well, there's we have a Yoga Samrat said, Gadi, I thought you were a vegetarian. Are you a vegetarian?
I'm a carnivore. No, I'm not a vegetarian.
And Yoga Samrat also said, Michael, are you a Yid? No, and no. Chas v'chalila. No, I'm not a Yid.
When was the last time you prayed on Yom Kippur, Mike?
I pray every day. Okay, so this guy, local interest, he's very critical of me. He says, if you guys are not trying to kill time, Mike could tighten it up. He wants me to tighten it up, Gadi. He would agree with you today about my joke about you on Yom Kippur. He spends 3 minutes to make the point that Iran is a nuclear threat, which is not news to anyone listening. Then he keeps saying, often 2 or 3 times in a row, like he's stuttering. I suspect that is an affect, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry, local interest. It's not an affect. It's just the way I am. I actually have some sympathy for local interest there. When I hear the tapes of myself and I hear all the ums, it drives me crazy. All I can do, all I can do is apologize to. I understand your pain. I feel your pain, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's just the way I am. My family makes fun of me about it. It's not an affect.
Mike, don't worry. We love you as you are, and we always remind ourselves that this show only lasts an hour, and then we're all free to go.
Or you can just decide not to watch it. But don't do that.
No. Don't say that. No.
Don't do that. Don't do that. And this is a good time to tell everyone to subscribe and to like. To leave a comment. And even you can leave comments complaining about me, my poor sense of humor, and my tendency to go too much. That's fine. Just the most important thing is leave a comment. Which we read. We read them all. We read them all, by the way.
And respond to some. But fortunately there are a lot of them. We can't respond to all of them, but we try. So now we are at that time of the show where the dumbest take on the news is discussed. Mike, do you want me to go first? Because
you go first. I'm looking for mine here. I got it. You go ahead.
So mine is a tweet by Shirit Avitan Cohen, who is a reporter for and a commentator for Israel Hayom, Israel Today, the newspaper. And she reports that Minister Gallant met with Forum Gvura. Forum Gvura are a hawkish forum of parents, of bereaved parents, who are in Israeli public life a sort of counterweight to the forum of the hostages, the families of the hostages. Not all the families of the hostages are on the families of the hostages forum. Some of them are on the Forum Gvura, because that the families forum is advocating for a deal and a ceasefire, and Forum Gvura is which is Courage Forum, is advocating for victory. So Gallant met with them, and he said Israel has no territorial intentions, and therefore victory will be measured by the question how much damage we did to them in relation to how much damage they did to us. Until now, our success is phenomenal. And that's another dumb thing to say. It's if you are the Minister of Defense, why would you define the limits of this war if you're trying to deter your enemy? And this is I've been saying on the news in Israel, on television shows in Israel, that Gallant is the ambassador of the Biden administration inside Israel. And isn't it exactly the Biden de-escalation doctrine? We tell our enemies, don't worry, it's not going to be too bad. We're just about to end, and we can all have a ceasefire and sing Kumbaya together. And I don't know if this was dictated by Americans or if Gallant is just infected by the frame of mind of the Americans. Because if you remember Gallant, in the first days of the war, he was advocating an immediate invasion of Lebanon, and his rhetoric was the most radical about how we must achieve total victory. And here he is now explaining to the enemy in an Israeli open forum the limits of our planned incursion into Lebanon. Luckily, Netanyahu doesn't always feel bound by what Gallant is saying. I'm putting it very mildly here.
Yeah, I think I have 2 points on that. One is that I think they are influenced by the Americans, both in terms of American ideas, but there's this other problem Israel has, and it's always had, that and the problem is it cannot translate its military achievements into political goals without a great power, without the United States. And so Israel is dependent on the United States to shape the political environment around it. And it can't, so you notice that the only political goal that the Israelis have announced about the North is that the people of the North who have been evacuated will go back to their homes and live there in safety. But it hasn't described at all, the Israelis haven't described at all what they're aiming for in Lebanon. What order do they want in Lebanon? And part of the reason they're not saying
they haven't been speaking about the day after, haven't they?
They haven't been speaking about the day after, right? So partly they're not.
Mike, Israelis are getting it. Israel is not declaring its target because it is creeping towards a war with Iran, and everybody understands this. And there was this photo, I think it was on Yinon Magal's Telegram channel, where some soldier wrote on a bomb attached to a plane, he wrote, "No strategy." We know what the strategy is. It's to win. That's the strategy.
Yeah. But I think there's this is not an unimportant point. If you're gallant and you're standing before the public, you want to tell them, you want to show signs of advance, and you want to give them a sense of achievement. The easiest thing to go by is number of fighters killed, number of tunnels captured, etc.
Body bags.
Body bags, yeah, which is because that's a metric. It's a real tangible metric that you can present to the public. So I'm a little bit more sympathetic to him than you are, although I understand your concern and I share it. Okay.
So your dumb mistake, Mike.
My dumb mistake is actually tailor-made for you. The Aluf Bin in Haaretz, one of your favorite writers, says that the leaked documents, which I mentioned in the news, these are the Hamas documents that show that Hamas was working to bring Iran and Hezbollah into the fight, and had briefed them ahead of time of what it intended to do. Didn't tell them when and exactly what it was going to do, apparently, but it did tell them it had big plans. They called this the big October 7th. They called the big project, and the goal of the big project is to destroy Israel. Anyway, Aluf Bin says that the documents seek to persuade Western public opinion that the IDF is not trying to punish defenseless Palestinians and Lebanese, but save Israel from destruction. Instead, they show that Netanyahu's policies pushed Hamas to launch the war by itself without waiting for Hezbollah and Iran. Now, this all hinges on the point that one of the reasons why Hamas decided to go it alone was, or to go in 2023, was that it saw the internal divisions in Israel. And so therefore, Aluf Ben concludes, because Netanyahu pushed for the legal reform and divided Israel, that was done. The division of Israel was entirely Netanyahu's doing. You understand? That's what caused October 7th. And this is the dumb mistake. I'll let you explain to us why this is the dumb mistake, because this is a softball to you. This is tailor-made for you.
It absolutely is. And I'll add something about the other arguments Aluf Ben is putting forward, because he actually says that this is a minor argument. The fault with Netanyahu, he also says, is because the Hamas were planning to postpone this until they could cooperate, until they could do it along with Iran and Hezbollah. But they made it earlier because of Netanyahu. So it's so dumb because this may have saved our lives, that they jumped the gun instead of waiting for the full plan along with Iran. So Aluf Ben is so, look, Haaretz is a tabloid hiding behind broadsheet, and all they care about is hammering at Netanyahu. So no matter what the strategic issue at hand is, how can we turn this against Netanyahu? It's also in the headlines and everything. And this is becoming, it's a farce, because also Israel is full of signs financed by a very rich leftist elite, full of signs saying, you're the head, you're at fault. You remember? Also mentions this. They're trying to pin everything on Netanyahu, which Israelis think Netanyahu is responsible, but they also remember that the top brass did not wake Netanyahu up on the night between the 6th and the 7th. So how can he be responsible for something he was not even informed about? I mean, he's responsible because he is the prime minister, but you can't ignore all the other aspects of it. But they are only interested in one thing. And what is happening, Mike, is that this frame of mind, which almost the whole of the Israeli press shares, is gradually drifting away from Israeli consensus, because Israelis are not interested in accountability at this moment. They are interested in victory. And all the rest, all the other accounts, we can settle later. So while these people are obsessing about Netanyahu, I met with a leftist friend who came up with this new argument. He said, well, Netanyahu has been trying for a year and hasn't succeeded, so now it's time to replace him. But look, Israelis are saying, who are you going to replace him with? People who offered to end this war 7 times until now, or as I like to say, 6 times from Sunday. They've every opportunity to bring this war to an end without victory was seized upon by one or more of Netanyahu's opponents. So all this frame of mind is just, they're bickering on a raft that's looking at the continent and telling the continent that it's drowning. And they are just, it's a ship of fools is what's left of the Israeli press. And by the way, if I can go back to where we started, the Michal Peilan was a reporter for N12, which is the major Israeli television news organization, was covering the prayer of Yom Kippur in the Gan Meir, in the Meir Park. And she had a picture of me, Shimon Riklin, who is a presenter for Channel 14 and a right-winger and a religious guy with a kippah, and Shefi Paz, who is fighting against illegal immigration in South Tel Aviv. And she said, sometimes a picture is better than 1,000 words. So what's wrong with the Yom Kippur prayer? Look at these dark people. Look at these horrible deplorables. That's all you need to say. And when you look at the actual prayers, Tel Avivians, religious and secular, came to that prayer because they think that this war against Judaism in the public sphere is intolerable. This is beyond the consensus. So the one thing that the anti-Bibi contingent did that was, I think, fatal to their project in the end, and this was eclipsed by the war, so we don't see it, was just before the war, their attempt to shut down public Jewish prayers. The general consensus in Israel is that's a line you don't forbid Yom Kippur prayers. You don't forbid hakafot in Simchat Torah. And so, as I said in the beginning, that's a very serious matter, Mike. Very serious.
We're going to end on that note. Let me just add about Aluf Ben, that when you see the Israeli forces going into southern Lebanon now and discovering all of these, this warren of tunnels that they created and that they equipped so that they're ready for an immediate attack on Israel, and some of those tunnels go under the border. So that they could come up and surprise Israel inside Israeli territory. When you see all that, you realize, I don't want to say this in the wrong way, but it was kind of fortunate in a way that October 7th happened without without the coordination of Hezbollah and Iran. I mean, not, you don't want to say it's. I don't. You see what I'm trying to say? I can't find the right words, but that if these three entities, Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, are going to attack, it's better for Israel that they attack separately, sequentially, rather than all together. So I don't believe his argument that it was Netanyahu that sparked the decision of Hamas to go it alone. I think Hamas didn't inform.
No, but he did say that the prospect of normalization with Saudi Arabia was going to sideline the Palestinian issue, and that also was part of their consideration to jump the gun. But let me add, and I'll throw it back to you, that it's not just Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. They were also activating Hamas in the West Bank. They also had tentacles into the Israeli Arab citizenry, in which they're trying to radicalize the cells. And then there are also the Houthis and West Iraq and Syria. So it would have been at least a seventh front. It potentially could have been a seventh front attack, which we found it. It took. Remember, it took days. It took days to clean the south of terrorists. It took us a very long time to find our balance. So it could have been disastrous.
Yeah, so much worse. So it's a silly argument. It's a silly argument. Doesn't make any sense on any level.
Haaretz, ever since they closed my column, just went unhinged. I was the last connection to reality that they had. Okay, so we wish you all a happy Sukkot. I'm always hesitant to wish us a peaceful time till our next episode, because I'm praying for victory more than peace. And
there's going to be an Israeli attack on Iran in the next few days.
Another prediction that we can pin down on you, Mike, for our next episode. So
yeah, if the Israelis have not attacked by next Tuesday when we meet again, I will be really, really surprised. And I will not be in Washington next Tuesday. I'll be at an undisclosed location.
Once again. So we will see you on the road next week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Please subscribe to our channel. Please also like it and feel free to comment. And we will see you, hopefully, on the other side of the Israeli attack on Iran.